Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of the SVA MFA Fine Arts Talk Series. This afternoon, it's my pleasure to introduce Kenneth Tan, an interdisciplinary artist who works with video, sculpture, installation, movement, performance, and photography. His practice examines the performance of masculinity, the transformative potential of ritual, and expressions of intimacy within groups. And this work has been the feature of solo exhibitions at Commonwealth and Council, Los Angeles. And as usual, if I don't mention the location, it's in New York. Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive in Berkeley, California. Ballroom Marfa, Museum of Contemporary Art, Tucson, Institute of Contemporary Art, Los Angeles, Queens Museum, Madison Museum of Contemporary Art. That's in Madison, Wisconsin.
Yes.
Yes. The Kitchen, List Visual Arts Center. Wait a minute. Is that right? No?
MIT. Yeah.
You that's in there? Okay.
Yeah.
I guess I edited wrong. The University of Texas at Austin, Minneapolis Institute of Art, and there it is again, MIT List Center for Visual Arts in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Group exhibitions that have included his work have been presented by the Museum of Contemporary Art, Denver. That's forthcoming. Kalamazoo Institute of Arts in Kalamazoo, Michigan. And that one's curated by Rahima Barber and Larry Osei-Mensah, who we've worked with in the past. The Shed here in New York, Blind Spot Gallery in Hong Kong, Sculpture Center, Commonwealth and Council, again, 47 Canal, MMAG Foundation in Amman, Jordan, Hollybush Gardens in London, Vashon Gallery at Seattle University in Washington State, the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, the Museum of Fine Arts Houston, MNB Art in Los Angeles, Gallery Diet in Miami, LACE, Los Angeles Contemporary Exhibitions, and Honor Fraser in LA. His work has been screened at Whitechapel Gallery in London, the New Museum, Anthology Film Archives, and Museum of Fine Arts Houston. And this work has been supported by the Foundation for Contemporary Arts, NYFA, New York Foundation for the Arts, Pioneer Works, LMCC, that's the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council, MFA Houston's Core Residency Fellowship, which is a terrific program, California Community Foundation, and Art Matters Foundation. His work is in the collections of the Hammer Museum, the Guggenheim Museum, Minneapolis Institute of Art, Dallas Museum of Art, LA County Museum of Art, and the Cantor Center at Stanford University. His work has been reviewed and discussed in Bomb Magazine, Sculpture Magazine, the Brooklyn Rail, Art in America, the New York Times, a few times, Hyperallergic, The Believer, which is sadly defunct, but was a wonderful periodical, Minneapolis Star Tribune, Artsy, Art Agenda, Modern Painters, Art Review, Art Info, T Magazine, that's the style magazine of the New York Times, the LA Times, Art Forum, Artillery Magazine, Frieze, Art in America, Extra, Fine Arts LA, and LA Weekly. Kenneth is currently an assistant professor at Rice University in Houston, Texas, and is also on faculty at the Milton Avery Graduate School of the Arts at Bard College. He has also taught in a number of institutions. I think it's mostly sort of temporary gigs at Harvard, Princeton, Middlebury College, Parsons the New School, and Sarah Lawrence College. Ken received an MFA in Los Angeles and a BFA from the Cooper Union here in New York City. Please join me in giving a warm welcome to Kenneth Tan.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for that exhaustive introduction, Mark. It's funny when you read the publications and thinking about how some of those no longer exist, which is always a little sad. But yeah, thank you for inviting me to talk, and thank you, Isabel, for all the logistical work getting me here. So today, I'm just gonna walk you all through, I guess, the trajectory of my body of work. And I tend to like to start these kinds of talks with grad students, with a couple of artists that were very influential to me when I was in graduate school. People that I was thinking about, and that I still think about. It's interesting to kind of revisit these folks and their work. Sometimes when I'm making work, I'm trying to figure out like what it is, why is it that I'm doing what I'm doing, and inevitably some of these artists will continue to be relevant. So this is Adrian Piper, her performance from the Catillus series from 1970. This is a series of performances she did in public spaces where she would do something that would be kind of silently disruptive, let's say. So for example, riding the city bus with the sock in her mouth. Other versions of this include being covered in I believe, cod liver oil or walking down the street. Basically something that would provoke some kind of response in a way that was, the performance itself was quite muted and didn't really call attention to itself, but yet would, in its own quiet way, create this sort of disruption in the space around it. This is Valley Export, an Austrian artist. This piece is called Tap and Touch Cinema from, I believe, 1968. A performance where she donned this cardboard box with kind of a curtain in the front and would ask passerby to stick their hands into the curtain, and she was topless underneath. And not only inviting a certain kind of interaction with her body, but also having to create this moment of eye contact to sort of certainly make the situation more awkward, but also to kind of create this intense moment of intimacy, both physically and psychologically between the two. This is Marina Abramovic, Rhythm Zero. I think this is also 1970. I could be wrong about that. It's a performance where she basically laid out on the table a number of implements and tools and props, and she basically allowed people to do whatever they wanted to her with these items. One of them including a pair of scissors that someone could cut away parts of her clothing with. This is Tei-Ching Hsieh. He's on the right, with the artist Linda Montano. He was known for these 1 year long performance works. This was, I think, the third or fourth one in the series, and basically they were tied to each other with this length of rope, maybe 6 feet long, for the course of a year. And as you can imagine, it's a pretty intense commitment for either artist. And I particularly, there's so much to talk about with this piece alone, but I was particularly interested in how they both basically collapsed whatever distinction there might be between the categories of art and life. Every moment of every day in which they were tied together was part of the artwork, even when they were sleeping or using the bathroom. There was no way in which they created a situation where everything they did was still under this category of both life and art, which is something that I thought about a lot when I was in graduate school, and certainly is still a kind of fundamental tension within works that deal with performance, let's say. And then someone a little more contemporary is Patty Chang. This work is, I believe, called In Love from 2001. And it's a performance she did with her parents, 2-channel video. She recorded her eating an onion with her mother and her father. And the video, when you see it, it's played backwards, so it actually looks like the onion is being reconstituted in their mouths as they're doing this. And as you can imagine, it's physically intense. They're both crying. It looks like a very tender but also wrenching experience. So I guess, one through line with all these works is it's definitely, something about dealing with performance and in the body, but also using the body in a way that the way I describe it is sort of weaponizing vulnerability. Most of these artists I showed were women, and using their bodies in a way that sort of upended a hierarchical system, a patriarchal system, using their bodies in a way that could, again, ask questions about the space that these bodies occupied, but also using the camera oftentimes as a way to mediate these encounters, which is something that I thought I continue to think a lot about in my present work. So when I was in grad school, I had a kind of a difficult time. It's, something I feel more comfortable talking about now, many years into the future, but I felt like I probably did it too early. I was someone that was already very skeptical of going into grad school for my own reasons. But I did it anyway. And when I was there, it really sort of untethered me from a lot of the things that I had gone into my program wanting to do. So I really had to kind of rethink what I wanted to be as an artist. And one of the things that I ended up doing was sort of reacting, responding to the circumstances of being in a grad program, which is not always the best kind of thing to do. But anyway, I think this is one of the stronger things that came out of my 2-year experience, which is why I'm sharing with you today. But basically, I constructed this situation where maybe you're reading this already, where I built, so the grad program I was in had a dedicated gallery space. It was quite large. So in that gallery space, I built a structure that was a 1-to-1 scale. It was basically a framed out box that was the same dimensions as my studio. And I locked myself in this space for a few days. And I created this situation where I was sort of dependent upon my peers, my cohort, to kind of care for me. I went in there with nothing, or just went with there. I think I went in there with just a fire extinguisher because of fire code, but no food, no other items. And there was a little sliding shelf that was built into the structure that people could pass me things through. And there was a two-way mirror that allowed people to sort of watch me, and I couldn't see who was on the other side. So I basically set up the situation where I was I could be under surveillance, conflating the studio, the art studio, with a prison space, which I did feel very strongly about at the time. So in some ways it was a critique of grad school, but it was also an earnest attempt at thinking about how performance might function within a closed system, such as an MFA. The thing I kept wondering about is if I wanted to do performance, what does that mean when the people that are my audience are also the people that are critiquing the work? It was a really strange kind of thing that I kept sort of batting around, and this was one way of trying to resolve that tension, or actually use that tension as a material. So this is just images of people passing me things, the shelf itself. Here, me laying down, someone passed me this bedroll and pieces of paper to keep myself occupied with. This was my bathroom. And people could have the people that were in my grad program could have chosen not to give me anything, right? They could have just let me deal with the consequences of my actions on my own, and that would have been a totally reasonable response too. And so yeah, it was again trying to think about creating conditions in which I could be sort of vulnerable. And thinking about what that meant as a performance. And also, thinking about the structures, the physical structures, the physical apparatus of an MFA program, and again, how that could enable me sort of creating a certain kind of performative work. This next video that I'll play is something, it was the last thing I made in grad school. And during my time as a student, I was, while I was trying to figure out how to make work with this kind of built-in audience, I was also trying to create performances with people outside of my immediate situation. And I turned to Craigslist as a way to create situations for performances. Craigslist back then was really sort of like kind of free-for-all kind of space. It still exists now, but I don't think it's nearly as interesting as it used to be, 13 years ago, let's say. And what I would do, I was as part of a continuing series, was placing ads on Craigslist where I was looking for people to create a performance with, not really knowing what I was going to do, but wanting to work with someone and in a situation that wasn't entirely in my control. So I would often, not often, but when people would respond, we would, kind of figure out what it was that we were going to do, what they were comfortable with, what I was comfortable with. These people were paid, and they understood that it was for an artwork, whatever, however they understood what that meant. And that typically I would just show up to their home. It was always shot in their home by myself with a camera. So there would be no, other person in that space with us. And so this video is an edited document of an encounter I had with this fellow Jeffrey on the right here. Where I basically showed up not knowing what we were going to do. And the video itself is a kind of negotiation of a kind of performance. Or, maybe not even a performance, just like a series of kind of activities, physical activities that we would do within this very narrow space of time in his home. So I will play this. And it's also good to know that this was shot in Los Angeles.
I did a strenuous work job yesterday for a client in Echo Park, landscape cleanup, because of the storm that we just had in the last following week.
How often do you work?
For this client in Echo Park, twice a month.
And your other clients in general?
Well, I have a West Hollywood client that periodically, maybe once a month or once every 2 months, calls me for house cleaning, which are what I refer to as my repeat clientele.
Yeah.
There's a tendency to have them call upon me. I just did a Marina Del Rey client for house cleaning, which I put on a new clientele list, which I got my repeats, but I still try to pick up new clients. And it's like, with me, $10 an hour, 2 hour minimum, whatever, it's like, let me help you take some of the stress off. Is there anything that I could do that ends up freeing them up to do other things? So it's kind of like a mother's helper, so to speak, or whatever, so that they have more time to do things that they want to do, because they don't have to take care of these little things, because I'm there to take care of these little things. tend to do layers.
You mind just switching shirts?
No.
I mean, with you and me.
Oh, yeah,
Is that cool?
Yeah. It's a small, so.
Well, I think I'm a small as well. Is there front or back?
It's where the red,
Got it.
yeah.
Oh, it is kind of small.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, alright. A support is going on your head.
Like this.
Oh, like an upside down, a headstand.
And then if you wanted to move my legs or whatever, I don't know, it just came to me.
Okay, okay, can you help me try to do that? Can you help me get into that position?
Well, it's just a matter of going like this,
Okay.
and then you just gently go like that. Okay. And see, and you straighten your legs, and you got that, and you can put your back up against the wall if you need to. Use the wall as a support, and I didn't know if you wanted me to take one leg or hold you in that position back here with your legs forward.
Yeah.
Okay, bring me down. And see, it's like this. I can go like this. But see, I'm light enough to,
Right.
it's just about balance.
Can we incorporate is that their sleeping?
Yeah.
Do you use that to sleep with?
Sometimes I do. I got 2 of them.
Can I put that on?
Yeah. I just created this little, what you call it here. So I lift
Pocket.
up. Yeah. I'm always creating little deals like this.
Yeah. Okay, extend your arm.
We don't know.
Yeah, this is yeah. Okay, so we're just gonna wing it, because I'm not.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you facing me?
Mm-hmm. Turned.
I'm gonna sit down,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you can just move for a little bit, and then we can switch. Sounds like you're on the ground.
Mm-hmm. Just random movement.
Yeah.
Stretches.
Yeah. Just make sure you don't hit anything.
Around in a circle, moving my lower body in a circle to the right and then going back to the left, taking turns. Upper body keeps moving up and down across my legs, across my arms, across my chest, back, across my back, around my neck, through my hair, up and down, arms stretching toward the sky, with one arm bracing up and down one arm, and then the other going down toward this ground, turn, kind of like in a breakdancing move.
Yes, do
but
that. Yeah, do like a break dance move on the ground where you kind of roll over.
and my body flat all the way around, moving my legs like I'm crawling through mud, like I'm a soldier crawling through the brush, trying not to be seen by the enemy. While I'm on my back, lift my legs up toward the sky, with me on my back, and then go further in an upside down, kind of like I was on the wall. Then doing the upside down bicycle motion with my legs toward the sky.
Give me your arm, and we'll switch places. Okay, here, you sit down in your bed. I'm just Sounds like you're really getting into that on the ground there.
Just going round in circles, upper body movement, going around in circles, stretching up toward the sky,
Yeah.
just random movements. Round upper body movement, keep moving in a circle, but take the upper body and go down and around like you're making a circle with your upper body movement, but you're remaining standing on your feet and you're just continuing to move in a circle, up and down one leg, up and down the other leg. Guiding your hands up and down across your arms, across your chest, move it back across your back, up, down, then stretch up toward the sky. Stand in a stationary position and lift one leg and just reach up toward the sky.
With my leg or just
yeah,
my
lift
arm?
one leg up while standing on the other, reach up toward the sky and
Uh-huh.
hold it for 3 seconds.
Okay, you cut off.
And then opposite the position by holding up the other leg
Okay.
for 3 seconds with your arms stretched up toward the sky.
Okay.
Get on your knees and do a rollover position.
Roll over onto my back.
Yeah, all the way in a full circle. And then if you've ever seen break dancing, just go move your body slowly in a circular position and move your legs up toward the sky as you're laying on your back like you're riding a bicycle.
Okay.
And then hold it for 3 seconds in that position, just with your legs up in the air. Roll your body as if you're doing, bend your knees, but roll in a circular motion like you're trying to get up and you can't get up in a normal position.
Okay.
So you see that you have to turn your body all the way to the right, bending your knees in order to gain full standing position.
Okay, should I stand?
Yeah, you're trying to stand, but you
Okay.
can't stand in the normal position, so you're turning your body to the left or the right, moving your leg.
So with that video and the sort of unrehearsed, largely improvised, activity with Jeffrey, I think there's definitely the absurd sort of human comedy of whatever it is that we were engaged in there. Was really fascinating. But I think for me, it was about, entering into this space and really not knowing what to expect. And being vulnerable in that way of not being fully in control of the situation, and certainly, whatever dangers that entering into a space or entering into a kind of negotiation with someone might entail, was all kind of part of what made a space like Craigslist, a virtual space like Craigslist interesting. Back when perhaps like you could do these sorts of things more. I don't know if it's just me being naive that allowed me to do that. I don't think I would quite feel so comfortable today, but certainly as a younger artist, that was a really interesting way of thinking of taking the things that I was interested in with those early performance artists and sort of updating that, or at least like recognizing that Craigslist could offer me a way to continue to think about the ways in which I could like perform a certain kind of bodily vulnerability, but also investigating this kind of like physical intimacy with someone else, with a stranger. And I made a couple more videos in the same manner, but for each one was quite different from each other. This fast forward a little bit to 2015, where I made this video with my father, and certainly that Patty Chang video, in Love was very much an inspiration. Thinking about bodies between family members and my relationship with my father, which was one that was how best to describe it? One that was not, let's say, one that was based on like a lot of physical intimacy. I mean, we have a kind of intimacy, but it's not one that is predicated on like the free flowing kind of emotions. Let's say it's one that I think for a lot of Asian people growing up in this country, or first generation, they might recognize the ways in which like their parents, even though these are the most sort of close people in their lives, are also simultaneously opaque and mysteries. And so I wanted to use you know, an artwork or performance as a way to kind of investigate that relationship. And in this video, certainly this is, he's not a stranger. The things that we're doing are very much staged for the camera. So that's different. And it was also shot in the home that I grew up in the basement, which is kind of like his lair within the house. My mother sort of like occupies the ground floor. He's like the subterranean kind of creature. At least that's like how I understood it when I was growing up. So it felt appropriate to like situate the video in that space. And in this video, which I'll play, it's us kind of engaging in a number of like different activities, let's say, that simultaneously are kind of ritualistic, but also playful and absurd, but also awkward at the same time. Oh, this is still image from that. And another one. Yeah. So one thing that people inevitably ask me about this video is what was the process of getting him to agree to do all this? And I thought it was gonna be really challenging and, you know, I'd have to sort of explain all these weird things I was gonna have to ask him, I had in mind to do. But he surprisingly went along with it right away. He didn't, you know, really even question what it was that I was doing and why I was doing it. And I think that for him, you know, he also understood this as an opportunity to spend time with me. At the time I was living in LA, he was living in New York, so I would have to travel home just to do this project. And I think that you know, for him, that was significant. And that even though, again, like we were gonna be doing these things that were just sort of inexplicably strange, that was fine for him. So I thought that was really quite moving, actually, that he was so willing to do all this. You know, if I contrasted that with my mother, she wouldn't, you know, it would just be like this endless argument. So I think as bizarre as some of these things were, I hope that sort of tenderness does sort of come through, that there was a kind of like earnest sort of like emotional core driving this video. This is a project that I did pretty much immediately after finishing that one, and it was sort of like my biggest opportunity up until that point. It was an invitation to participate in Made in LA in 2016, which is Los Angeles's version of, well, it's the LA Biennial, basically. And when the curators invited me to participate in the show, I knew that I had an idea for a project already that I pitched to them. And this is actually the document that I sent to the curators, outlining what I was trying to do and my influences, and also like a very preliminary budget, and also some like research images. And I think it might, you know, it's interesting to see, you know, not only the work itself, which I'll screen a bit of, but also how, you know, these things get made essentially. I won't read the whole thing, but basically my proposal was to create a video that was entailed the creation of a mock men's social club. It's kind of what I described it, where I would basically work with seven men who would be paid to produce a video in my studio over a course of time. So when I was making this, I actually wasn't living in LA, which is a kind of funny loophole for some of these invitations, for some of these exhibitions that claim to be location specific. But anyway, I was in Houston at the time doing this residency, and part of that residency entailed giving me this big studio, which I'll show you. And in a kind of funny nod to that earlier piece I did in graduate school, I basically turned my studio into a stage set where my eventual participants would be filmed for this project. And as part of the process of finding my participants, I also used Craigslist again, but this time I also used Reddit, which is a very different space than Craigslist, which I found out. But that's where I ended up meeting most of the people that agreed to appear in this video. So I'll just go through these slides. These are just some reference images that I found on the internet that I showed as part of this pitch to kind of like detail my vision. Basically, these are just sort of images from existing actual men's social clubs. Or actually, no, I shouldn't say that. They didn't call themselves social clubs. These were like sort of male bonding groups. The lower image is from like a corporate team building exercise. Basically, these organizations that were for men only, that were ostensibly about building camaraderie or trust. You know, often church groups. A lot of these were actually images from church groups, where guys, you know, a lot of 50, 100 guys, whatever, would go out to the forest for a weekend away from their families to sort of like create these spaces of intimacy and community. But often these excursions involve these kind of ridiculous activities that they would play, or not always ridiculous, but a lot of games. All of this sort of bonding was mediated through activities. And I really thought about that and kind of used that in my own video. Here's some more reference images. And this is actually the posting that I put on Reddit in Houston, again, where I was shooting this. It's a very like cheerful voice that I use to kind of like prove that this is like a legitimate thing. Obviously, when you put anything on the internet, people automatically assume the worst. And certainly, looking to work with 7men for video does not necessarily scream, like something that you want to, put your faith in. But I was ultimately able to find 7 individuals that were interested in not only sort of like going through with this activity, but was also interested in some of the themes I was hoping to explore. Of course, some of these 1 or 2 guys, they were very clear that they were just doing this for the money, which was fine. But there are other guys, and all their backgrounds were quite different. Socioeconomically, they were, some were actually interested in, exploring masculinity in this sort of different way, let's say. So this is an image of my studio and the construction of the set. Again, building another box within a box for the purposes of a pseudo kind of performance piece. My studio was maybe 300 square feet, and the set basically took up 75% of that space. And I kind of modeled it after, this wood paneling, I think, is very evocative of other basement spaces, for example, or a church rec room, kinds of places that are very familiar and domestic, but also, again, places for different kinds of physical activities, let's say. And you can see it, like I just carved out like a very narrow corridor for my actual studio that wasn't part of this set. This is what it looked like. This carpeting was salvaged from my landlord, who was redoing her house and just had the right amount of carpeting to pad the floor with. So a very, very modest, kind of cheap looking set. And I think that was kind of the quality that I was looking for in the video. This was also what I could afford to produce within the budget that I was given. And these are some stills from the video, the men that agreed to participate. And I'll play just a little bit of this. It's 30 minutes in its entirety. It's on my website if anyone's interested, but this is just a short clip. And also I'll say that everything that was done here is also unscripted, basically unrehearsed. And I'm the camera person. So it's the participants of the room plus myself, and that's it. No one else is in the room.
No, I think
It's going everywhere. Oh my God.
Oh, Jesus, get away from me, man. Come on. Get away from me, Peter.
I nearly ran through my pants.
Get him. Some strategical error on your part.
Wash it out of my shoes.
Oh, man, shoes.
Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Hey Trevor, I mean, noticing you're tall as well. You've got long, lanky personality like myself, as well as physique, and your hair is awesome, nice and long, and beard's all nice and full. You got the duality going on in your face. Up top is straight, down top it's all rough. Yeah, you look like you don't have any of the problems that most of our society has in terms of just being obese or anything. You've got a great kind of physique and balance to your life that goes through in your diet, and it shows through in just how your physical appearance is.
What's up, Nico? You're pretty hairy, man. That's good. It means you got a lot of testosterone. So that's good. It's a good sign. I like your skin complexion. You're just a good tone. Lots of people have a good tone, but you got a good skin. I like the way you dress. You seem relaxed. Like you didn't think too much about dressing, but you're just just wearing some clothes. You seem like you know how to party, how to have fun. Yeah, keep it up, man. Good work. I'm waiting to hear your bell sound different than everyone else's.
Well, maintenance.
Yeah, you got it.
It went low.
That was right in my ear, whoever that was.
Do one where everybody's making as much bell noise as possible.
Alright. Throw them on. Nobody goes silent.
To walk towards the silence. That's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
To walk towards the silence, man.
It is smart.
My name is Philip. My grandmother told me it's not polite to ask people how old they are. But, I'm from Southern California.
Okay. So you're not going to tell me then?
No,
Okay.
unless I just absolutely have to.
All right. Fair enough.
29. I celebrated my 29th birthday last year.
Okay. That's cool. What drew you to this project?
The absurd was an interesting facet. There's also this pretty hot little chick I'm interested in that's been urging me to do something creative for some time. And then being offered money to do it seemed like a win-win-win.
There's a lot I can talk about in this video, but I think one thing I want to add is that after the video with my father, I kind of made a conscious decision that I didn't want to appear in front of the camera anymore. I felt that after having done that and other preceding work, I felt like I was no longer sort of exploring a sense of vulnerability, at least in myself anymore. I felt I had done this enough that it no longer felt like a challenge, but also that the stakes were not quite the same. Placing myself in front of the camera was, you know, I was no longer, I guess, on a, I don't know if this is the best way to put it, but like on even like a remotely equal playing field as the person that I was working with. I felt like there was a definite difference in I guess power, and so it felt sort of disingenuous to place me as a participant, at least in that way, in front of the camera. I certainly am a participant in this video. You know, you do hear my voice and you hear me giving direction or responding or talking to the guys throughout the video. It's just that my participation is different. And so Stump, the video with my father, was the last one that I appear in. I'm gonna fast forward because I'm running out of time and I want to talk about a larger project. This is something I did that premiered at Sculpture Center, a video about the prom. If people aren't familiar with the In Practice program, you should definitely look into it. It's an open call that Sculpture Center runs every year. I encourage everyone to apply. You don't have to be a sculptor to participate. It's a great open call for young artists. This is, so fast forward to this project, which I started in roughly 2020 before the pandemic. And it was, it's something that I'm still kind of creating work around. It's a kind of multi-exhibition project that involves, that actually was catalyzed by this article in the New York Times Magazine in 2017 about Asian American fraternities and the kind of the violent hazing that often happens behind closed doors within these groups. And I had no experience or really any interest in these groups, either growing up or just as an artist. It was not something that I was really paying any attention to until I read about, or I read this article. And I think for me, it was really interesting, because certainly it dealt with issues of masculinity and identity, but also in the way in which performance was utilized within these groups, how the body plays a role within the negotiation of identity, and also how violence became instrumentalized as a way of sort of navigating all of these other themes. And so the story behind this article is basically this young man named Michael Deng, who was pledging to his fraternity at Baruch College in the city, was basically murdered by his brothers while pledging. And there was an investigation that occurred afterwards, and it was revealed that this sort of behavior was really systemic, and not just this chapter, but multiple chapters. And, you know, the question of why was this happening? What does this have to do with being a young Asian American male in this country? You know, what does this say about these young men, and perhaps, you know, is it, you know, about our culture in general? And this fraternity is called Pi Delta Psi. They have multiple chapters throughout the country. And, you know, in researching this further, it did become, there was evidence that these particular fraternities were hazing much harder than other groups. And there's, you know, there's any number of theories as to why this is the case. Multiple young men have died. while being hazed. And certainly, again, the question of identity and how it gets constituted and explored within these groups, played a large role in these violent deaths of these young men. And I got really fascinated by the story, and that kind of went down a longer YouTube rabbit hole, because I discovered that there was this very public performative element to what these groups are doing. So the hazing stuff obviously happens behind closed doors, but then there's this other ritual called the probate, which is something that gets performed as like the final step in the pledge's journey into being initiated. And these are, again, public ceremonies basically that combine recitation, theater kinds of things, kind of like slapstick performances, and they're highly choreographed. And I thought they were really fascinating, and there's like loads of them on YouTube. And I found one that was like particularly striking. And this takes place at at Washington Square. You can see the arch behind it. And I'll show you one of these probate videos, which for me really like crystallized a lot of things that I built a number of exhibitions around. So I'll play this. And again, this is not my video. This is put out by the fraternity itself, almost as a kind of recruitment, publicity, marketing material.
So we're gonna fucking show them what we went through. All right? I want you guys to go out there, show them who you were when you were public pledging. I want you to show them who you are now and who you're gonna fucking be when you're done. Okay? You guys are the future. You're the representation of us from now on. It's all on you guys, and you guys can do it.
Take it away.
And this is an unrelated fraternity, but I found this image also as part of my research. I just thought it was like really also quite moving, strange, tender. But yeah, I think like again, like a lot of these, the way that the body is kind of, the individual is sort of like put into this kind of mask, this kind of almost faceless kind of mask. The way that in that previous video, a lot of the aesthetics that these groups choose to use are borderline, if not explicitly fascist. At the same time, you know, like the gestures, the costuming, the mask itself, which has a whole kind of other backstory that I won't go into. At the same time, you know, these groups talk about wanting to create brotherhood and spaces of intimacy and sort of cultural belonging. And so there's, you know, these things just kind of come into conflict with one another. And I thought, and again, I was really drawn to how performance in the body becomes a one way to kind of mediate or negotiate these tensions. So I created a couple of different bodies of work. Oh, I'm going backwards, sorry. From this, the first of which was this performance that happened at the Kitchen in 2020. And it was supposed to be a live performance, but it happened at the height of the first COVID winter. So it ended up just being a live streamed event where I worked with 4 actual dancers to create this performance that was trying to think about certainly the probate, but also that as a ritual of mourning, thinking a lot about the death of not just the actual individuals, the young men through hazing, but also a kind of more symbolic death. You know, the loss of a sense of individuality for the sake of the group, which is so much of what the fraternity is built around. You know, if you look at what they were just doing, I think a lot of what their visuals and the performance comes from spaces like the military, where again, it's about instilling a sense of the group and trying to eradicate, you know, the individual. And so thinking about, you know, that as a kind of a violence, and then also overlaying that with aspects of Taoism, which I came to in a kind of oblique way, not because these groups were, these fraternities were engaged in the act of, or like using those practices, but it did, the yin yang did figure very prominently in their like coat of arms. I think I showed you an image before, and I was just thinking through like what that actually meant. I think for them, it was just like this convenient shorthand for some idea of Asianness, but I really wanted to kind of explore what that might mean in this context. So I did a lot of research into Taoist mourning practices, rituals around grieving and death in that tradition. And so part of the aesthetic of this performance was borrowed from that. So like these costumes, these white hoods, certainly the Bakwa symbol on the floor that was painted on the floor. This is a reference image from that I used as inspiration for the costumes for one part of the performance. So I created this 3-act performance at a time where it was almost impossible to imagine bringing bodies together. If people remember back to December of 2020, it was kind of a small miracle that we were even able to make this happen. Of course, I was bummed that it wasn't a live performance, but again, just given the circumstances, I was just grateful that the Kitchen went through with this really almost inconceivable experiment with me, for which I'm like forever grateful for. But this is not the Kitchen. The Kitchen this was an offsite space in Ridgewood, this massive warehouse that was adjacent to the artist Jim Hodges. He had a studio in like the next building, and he just had this giant open space that he used often as like a community space, but he lent it to the Kitchen. So next time you go over there, don't expect to see this big warehouse. I'm just going to show you still images of this performance that I worked with a choreographer to come up with some of the movement, but most of it was sort of original. And it was also like a very challenging thing, not just because of COVID, but because I'd never done a live anything before, at least in this way. This is the last thing that I'll talk about, which is an exhibition, again, still delving into this material around the fraternities. It's called The Founding of the World, and it's a video installation with sculptures. It first was exhibited at my gallery in Los Angeles called Commonwealth and Council earlier this year. It just traveled to or closed at the Berkeley Art Museum and Pacific Film Archive also in California, and then it's traveling to Tufts University Art Gallery in January. But basically there's two, in the original exhibition, there are two rooms to this gallery. The first one is this white cube space that housed these sculptures. And for this version of the project, I was really thinking a lot about the violence within these groups and within the performance of the probate, and thinking about, again, groups of bodies and what that means when you kind of push them all together. So these sculptures are like a kind of a literal thinking through of that. There were 3 of them, and they're quite big, and they look like they're made out of clothing, but they're actually casts. Sorry, I'm just kind of going through this quickly. I just want to get to the close up. They look like they're actual pieces of textile, but they're actually rigid. You can kind of see from the side. They're cast in this material called aqua resin, and they're made out of the original material were varsity jackets and sweatshirt hoodies. It's kind of clothing that the young men would wear in these fraternities. And I wanted to create something that was simultaneously threatening, but also perhaps like you couldn't tell whether these bodies, which are suggested by the clothes, were engaged in some sort of intimate activity or something perhaps more violent. Also, I was thinking about like the image of a pile of coats that you would see on a bed if you went to like a house party or a party in a dorm or something. I don't know, any situation where just a lot of bodies were sort of suggested, but not really clear what it was that they were doing. And then embedded in the sculptures itself are a number of different objects here. It's these metal watch bands. In this one, there's a whole lot of other stuff. So razor blades, watch bands again, handcuff keys, fake gold chains, good luck coins. What else is there? What other material? Dog tag, chrome dog tag. These are all things that like I kind of associate with being, an adolescent male. Things that might be attractive in terms of like presentation or dress, but then other things were kind of more, again, suggestive of the potentials for violence or the kind of the aesthetics that some of these groups use when they're performing. This is the third one, which has even more stuff kind of hanging from it. So whistles and these red tassels that you might find in certain East Asian practices. And they were all designed to, I hope, like feel kind of gaudy and excessive. And because again, I think I associate that with a certain kind of way that young men dress, at least, from my own experience. And then this is the other room, which is this video installation. There's a single channel video that I'll play, and the kind of flanking the video screen are these bottles. They're empty liquor bottles and cologne bottles that have these tactical flashlights beneath them, and so they glow up, and they look like these kinds of talismans. I knew I wanted to turn the video installation room into like this space of ritual. So these glowing objects felt like they were hovering. They felt like they were, again, had some sort of ritualistic function. The bottoms themselves are also things that I associate with a certain kind of, they're items that you might use as a part of rite of passage into adulthood, let's say. Certainly with the cologne, here's some close-ups, things that I remember from when I was younger, certain scents that just became like really lodged in my brain, for better or worse. And of course, the liquor bottles, I think, it's it's hard not to think about being a young person in college without also thinking about certain kinds of alcohol, and the way that, that really is part of the experience of being a young person in college, I think. And again, things that are about the excessive use of these things and how they are a part of certain kind of like bodily practice. And then in the wall of the projection, where the projection is projected onto is this butterfly knife that gets literally stabbed through the screen. So I'll just play the video, and this will be the last thing that I show. It's about 13 minutes long, and then I think we'll break and then come back for Q&A. You'll see that, like, in this video, I borrow very liberally from that probate video, but combined with some more abstract movement scenes. Yeah, I'll just play it. Oh, and I should say that some of the guys that are in this video are actual college students. From the school where I teach at now. They're not like actually my students, but they were recruited from the campus. And so in some ways the video does relate to their actual lived experiences. Okay, thank you.